You run countless miles, put in all the hard work, only to derail yourself with a simple mistake or silly slip up right before race day. I've seen it happen countless times before big events. I've done it myself, and you've probably done it too. One of the reasons I believe this happens is due to a concept called mental fatigue. In today's video, we'll dive deep into this concept and explore how mental fatigue might be the unseen factor leading to poor race performance and even your DNF. I'm Luke Pryor, psychologist, ultrarunner, and the founder of Endure Performance Team, a free community where dedicated runners explore human behaviour and peak performance. If you're aiming to elevate your running this year, be sure to check it out through the link in the description. We focus heavily on mindset alongside providing coaching, support, and a community to keep you on track and help you achieve your goals. We all know how demanding endurance sports can be on the body, but what about your mind? How does mental fatigue impact your performance? And could it be something you're overlooking in your race preparation? The answer is likely yes, and it could be leading to subpar performances. Mental fatigue has been studied extensively. While there's still much to learn, we already have a solid understanding of its acute effects on performance. Let's unpack what the science says and explore how it might relate to ultra running specifically. Mental fatigue is often defined by sports psychologists as a state of cognitive and emotional exhaustion, resulting from prolonged mental effort or stress. It occurs when the brain is overworked, causing a decline in focus, decision-making abilities, motivation, and overall mental performance. This can arise from the mental demands of training, competition, or high-stakes situations, and even general life stress, and significantly affect an athlete's psychological resilience and physical performance, especially in endurance events like trail and ultra running. Researchers often induce mental fatigue in a lab setting by having participants engage in cognitively challenging tasks, then assess their physical performance. They look at things like time to exhaustion, ratings of perceived effort, power output, pace, and motivation. And studies consistently show that mental fatigue leads to poor performance outcomes, slower paces, reduced power output, and higher perceived effort. Essentially, athletes are moving slower but feeling like they're working much harder, which also negatively impacts their motivation. And these are crucial factors when we think about it that will significantly impact our performance out in the trails. You may have had a similar experience to me, but I know for myself, after a long day of work where I should technically be physically rested, as a psychologist, I might see 5 to 7 clients a day, seated in a chair, very sedentary, be lucky to do 1,000 steps throughout the day. However, whilst I should be physically rested, mentally I'm pretty drained and exhausted. After a 7-hour period though, I'm pretty mentally drained and exhausted. So every time I try and do a run straight after work, it is an absolute rubbish run. I can barely run, the effort feels way harder than it should, and the pace is often much slower. And you've probably had a similar experience with your own work situation. And this is what the researchers are describing in terms of the effects of mental fatigue. So some of the side effects include things like weariness, decreased motivation, low energy, and a decline in mood and alertness. These side effects are exactly what I feel during my post-workout runs. Yet we often overlook how this mental fatigue affects our race performance. Let's dig deeper into how mental fatigue might specifically impact ultra runners. Mental fatigue doesn't seem to affect an athlete's maximal strength, explosive power, or anaerobic performance. However, in endurance events, the brain decides when to quit, whereas in shorter duration events, it's the muscles that dictate the limit. Mental fatigue can disrupt the decision-making process around pacing, an important factor for ultra runners. The brain needs to engage in cognitive control to choose an optimal pacing strategy, which doesn't require much thought for short bursts of effort. I think this is why we often say that ultra running is 90% mental and 10% physical. Mental fatigue can lead to two major consequences. It can either amplify feelings of exhaustion, such as I can't do it, or I'm too tired, or reduce the perceived importance of the task. This isn't worth it, I don't feel like doing it anymore. Now keep those points in mind. We're going to come back to those points because they're really important. Now this is where I'll add a bit of my own hypothesis based on my own observations from working with athletes and my own race experience. So far we've discussed the acute impacts of mental fatigue on performance right after a cognitive, exhausting activity. But what if it's not just about the immediate effects? What if it's equally important to be mentally well rested during the taper period before a big ultra marathon? Now logically, that seems like an obvious and common sense thing to consider. Yet many of us often neglect it, probably due to distractions, life responsibilities, travel, and associated with the race day, etc. But I've seen on many times athletes rock up to the start line and they're just ready to get the race started because the build-up has just been so exhausting. Think about this, you've invested so much time, energy and resources into preparing for your big event. Months of training, the excitement and dedication, But when race day finally arrives, especially if things aren't going as planned and you're dealing with pain or fatigue, it's easy to start devaluing the importance of the race. It's not worth it. I don't feel like doing this anymore. I've personally experienced this before. I've trained hard for a race, only to lose some enthusiasm for it 2 weeks before the event, as I shift my excitement to the race like in 4 or 6 months time down the line. I don't know if anyone else has had that experience or whether that's just me, but this shift in mindset might partly stem from mental fatigue after a long training block, leading us to feel less interested or even burn out, and it can easily derail our race performance. I've witnessed athletes do the physical tapering but fail to adjust mentally. They end up filling that spare time with extra commitments, social events, or additional work hours. On top of this, there's the stress of travel, race logistics, organising crews, social plans around the event, and by the time race day arrives, they're mentally drained. If you've been in this situation, it's easy to see how you might fall victim to one of the consequences of mental fatigue, either feeling more exhausted than you actually are, or devaluing the race itself. This is why I believe it's crucial to factor in mental recovery during the tapering period. If you've invested so much time into preparing for the race, it makes sense to ensure you're mentally fresh going into it. For many of us, life might force us to work more during taper. But there are small things we can do to reduce our mental load during the final week before the race. Worth considering these mental recovery strategies, especially if they can give you the extra mental resolve to push through when the going gets tough and help you reach that finish line. If you'd like support in your running, check out the Endurance Performance team by clicking the link below. We've got a course dedicated to building mental toughness and resilience, and I'm always here if you need individualised support. Thanks for watching, and see you out in the trails.